What's going on, guys? Real quick, if you want coaching with me, just go in the description box down below or head to masculineenergy.net//coaching. masculineenergy.net/coaching. That will get you coaching with me. Some people don't know where to look, so they email me all the time. So it's a lot easier for me just to make a real quick intro video telling you where to go. Thanks. What's going on, guys? So I want to talk to you guys about how letting go will cure all your issues, all your ailments, all your stresses, but it won't happen overnight. You have to get good at it. And a lot of people are not taught this. So seeing this for the first time will actually, it'll be kind of like learning any new skill. It'll take a long time for you to like really grasp the whole thing. That's why you have to read this book like as many times as you can. What I suggest all my students to do is highlight, make notes, reread the parts that stand out to you. But in this particular one, letting go is going to make the entire difference between your reality being shitty and neutral and normal, and obviously really good. So to go from shitty to neutral and normal, it takes a certain process. And then, of course, going from neutral to happy is a lot easier. There's a lot less suffering. It's not going to take a whole lot of work to go from neutral to happy because, but here's the thing, guys. You're not going to be sitting in happiness all the time. I don't. I do very well for myself, but I'm relentless in my goals. So whenever I get a success, I'm like, okay, cool. What's the next thing? Okay, cool. What's the next thing? Okay, cool. What's the next thing? And that's because I have happiness in most of my other areas of life. To be honest, it's not even like true bliss. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm looking and focusing on my goals. And then sometimes I have to take a step back and go, my God, like I'm doing so well, right? So that's what you guys need to start understand. That's your goal, but being neutral is the best place to be. And then from there, it's a lot easier to jump up into happiness because you can do things a lot easier. You can get out of bed a lot easier. You can make better decisions, etc. Right? But I want to talk to you guys about handling emotional crisis. Okay. So it starts with this. Because this is a very difficult problem for most people, some details are needed. There are several techniques to help move through emotional disaster much more quickly and with a better end result than allowing it to run on its own. So a lot of people are completely dominated and controlled by their emotions. They actually don't know how to handle emotions at all. When something hits them, they're like, and they go into like this panic, right? So it really needs to, you really need to, learning this will help you because this is what I've always done. I did it by accident, thank God. I was instilled with this almost by accident, but when I read this for the first time, it blew my mind because I was like, I already do this. This is awesome. But many of you guys don't. I thought it was normal, right? But I obviously came across so many people that haven't gotten through relationships, but this is exactly what I do. Okay? So I want you guys to really, really listen, okay? Recall the usual mechanisms that the mind consciously uses to handle emotions. That was already discussed earlier in this book, but it goes over them again, which is suppression or repression, expression, and escape. People are normally trying to do one of those or all of those three things. It really depends on them, right? These are only used. These are only like bad basically when they are used without conscious intent. When you use these things and you let your emotions drive you, you have no control. So you have to consciously gain control and know that you're in control and then deal with each emotion in pieces. And you can kind of do that, and I'll explain more. In an overwhelm, it is advisable to utilize them, but doing so consciously. The purpose of this maneuver is to reduce the sheer overwhelming quantity of the emotion itself so it can be disassembled and let go of in bits and pieces. This process is described below. What I see a lot of my students do is when they're going through the breakup, when they're really having a hard time, an emotion will hit them and then they're literally, it's like they're pulled in that direction. They're pulled in instead of going, no, I'm in control. So that's what this is going to really teach you. So I see students do this all the time. So you guys need to be able to gain control, hold the steering wheel, so to speak, because that will really help you. So that's sort of what he's describing here. Thus, in this case, it is all right consciously to push away as much of the emotion as we are capable of it at that moment. The emotion can be reduced in intensity by sharing the feeling with those close friends or mentors. So that's why coaching, I let my students go and vent. I've let them vent because they'll vent in my DM, like in my Telegram, because I know that it helps. When people vent, they're able to express that emotion. But what you guys can honestly do is that whole screaming into the pillow when you're alone, or working out and just going, "Ah!" Right? That's what you kind of want to do. And just think about what you're going through. Think about how angry you are. And you can use that to shave off some of the intensity. So the intensity of the emotion is really what gets you. The emotion itself is powerful, but when it's turned up to 11, that's when you're out of control and you're like, oh my God, and you get pulled in that direction, so to speak, right? It is also, by merely expressing the feeling, some of the energy behind it is reduced. So I think Tony Robbins and all of the community says this, but emotions are just energy in motion, right? So if you're angry, but some are more powerful than others. So the energy behind it just needs to be dialed down. And if eventually when that is dialed down completely, you don't feel it anymore. You're indifferent. It is also all right in this circumstance consciously to utilize escape mechanisms such as going out to a social situation to gain some distance from the upset, playing with the dog, watching television, going to the movies, playing music, making love, or whatever one's habit is under the circumstances. When the feeling has been reduced to its sheer quantity and intensity, it is best to start letting go of small aspects of the situation rather than the whole overall situation and the accompanying emotion itself. In a nutshell, go out and do things with your friends, talk to your therapists, coaches, whatever, friends, but when you don't talk to your friends about it too much. I really want you guys, if they ask or if they bring it up and they're willing to listen, look at their body language, and they're going to have a moment when they're like, bro, can you just shut the fuck up? Like that, they're going to have that. Okay. So go out and do things, go out and have fun to move away from the intensity. And then you can come back and revisit it when the intensity is down and learn the letting go method, which I'm going to explain in obviously this video and future videos, how to fully let go of the emotion itself, which again, this was going to go into. To illustrate this point, let's take the example of a man who loses his job after many years with a company and is now in an overwhelm of despair. By utilizing the three mechanisms already described, some of the emotion can be reduced. What he can look at then are some of the small trivia about the job. For instance, could he let go of wanting to have lunch where he always had lunch with his business colleagues? Could he let go of wanting to park his car in the parking space he always had in the past? Could he let go of wanting to ride up in the same elevator? Could he let go of the attachment to his desk? Could he let go of the attachment to the secretary and her friendliness towards him? Could he let go of the attachment to his computer? Could he let go of seeing, page flip, the same boss every day? Could he let go of the feeling of familiarity with the background noises of the office? The purpose of surrendering these small aspects of losing a job, which may seem trivial, is that it gets the mind into the letting go mode. You actually will get good at doing this as you practice it more. So at first I could only see the big picture. When this was explained to me, I tried to break down every problem I had into little chunks, and then they do seem trivial. They do seem weird or small. But then you can go, okay, like if I can let go of these things, if I can let go of these things, then it's going to be easy. Like this happens naturally. You can let go of the whole thing eventually. The letting go mode takes us up to the level of courage. The negative feelings have been acknowledged and worked through. Consequently, they've lost their charge. So that charge is what I'm telling you guys about. You have to turn that intensity down. So talking to a coach like myself, or talking to your mentors, friends, family, right? Do you notice that over time, it seems like that intensity so when you first get dumped and it first hits you, you're in complete shock, really. And then bam, it hits you, right? And you have bad dreams. You think about them all the time. And then as the weeks go by, letting go is actually a natural mechanism to us human beings. Because years ago, like some of you guys who have been in relationships before, you don't think about your exes, like your ex, don't you? You let them go a long time ago. It's natural for us. But what a lot of people do is they actually carry old emotions and identify themselves with those old emotions, and they never let those go. And realizing that you are not those and you're just an observer of them is where the big change will come for you. That's what happened with me. So when you recognize that you are not the emotions, that is where you guys will gain control again. And that intensity is what will make you realize that. So when that intensity's down, right, then it'll change. Suddenly there is the awareness that we have the courage to face the situation, recognize our feelings, and do something about them. So a lot of people going through breakups eventually go, you know what? I can handle this. I'm all right. But you don't get there from acting a fool, right? A lot of people want to jump into a new relationship, right? And that will cover up the emotions for a little while because you have something new, but it all comes back eventually, right? As the trivia are surrendered, curiously, the main event becomes less and less oppressive. The reason for the phenomenon is that we use the mechanism of surrender on one emotion. We are surrendering all emotions at the same time. It is as though all emotions have the same underlying energy. So that to surrender in one direction surrenders feelings which appear on the surface to be in opposite direction. This is a matter of clinical experience. It must be tried personally in order to believe it. Yeah, I could tell you that shit's true, right? I don't want to make this video too long by going into my own story, but give it a shot. After utilizing the above four methods, suppression, expression, escape, and surrender of smaller aspects, a fifth now becomes apparent. Every strong emotion is really a composite of a number of subsidiary emotions, and the total emotional complex can be disassembled. Thus, for instance, the man who's lost his job initially has an overwhelming feeling of despair, but as he begins to surrender around the periphery, and as he diminishes his overwhelm through consciously utilizing escape, suppression, and expression, he now realizes there's also anger. He sees that anger is associated with pride. There's a lot of anger in the form of resentment. There's self-individualization, which is a form of anger expressed against himself. How many of you guys going through breakups right now are mad at yourself for letting the relationship get to where it is? Say I. You know what I mean? So, you know how many times I've heard that? Oh man, Kyle, I'm so mad at myself for letting it get there. Oh, I suck. I'm such a bad person. No, you're not. No, you're not. You just let something bad happen. Doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're a shitty guy or a shitty girl. There is also a considerable fear. Thus, these associated emotions can now be addressed directly. So I've seen a lot of this happen where a breakup will happen, right? And they feel like they're never going to find someone new. They're never going to find a relationship that was they're not going to feel like they're going to connect with somebody new like they did with their ex. They feel angry at themselves. They're fearful. They're full of grief because the person is literally now breaking up with them. They have all of those red emotions I speak about in my previous videos. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, hold on. So when I talk about red emotions, I'm not going to say what these are, but basically when you're hanging out in the red all the time, right? When you hang out in the red all the time, your life is always going to seem like it's shitty, right? So when you move through and go back up to courage, doing courageous things, facing the actual fears, the grief, the anger, the pride itself, then you're going to actually, pop back up and you're going to feel a lot better soon. As soon as you exercise how you're feeling. When the fear is acknowledged and let go, all alternate possibilities that exist will become suddenly apparent to him, and as he surrenders pride, he'll quickly see that he is not faced with economic disaster as he had thought. Thus, as the disassembled emotional complex is taken apart into its component parts, each component part has less energy and can be surrendered individually. It's kind of like dividing the whole thing up into like slices of a cake or pizza, however you want to look at it. So instead of like looking at it like, oh my God, my problems are this gigantic thing, you can divide it up and let it go into pieces, which makes the entire thing way easier. If you have to eat an elephant, eat it piece by piece. So there's a saying about that. As we come out of the overwhelm, it will be remembered that a certain portion of the emotion was purposely suppressed or escaped. It can now be re-examined so it no longer does residual harm, such as ending up in bitterness, which people do, unconscious guilt, or lower self-esteem. So a lot of this happens after a break. Like people will hang on to stuff from childhood, right? Some girls and guys will have daddy issues or mommy issues, and they'll carry those into relationships. And those are the things that people don't like. They don't let go of things like that. They've never really let go of the fact that their parents may not have been around or loved them like they felt like they should be loved. So that they carry those expectations that they wanted from their mother or their father, even subconsciously, into the relationship they're about to go into, or that they're coming out of, or maybe you're right in the middle of it, and you're looking at that person and you expect them to show up in a certain way and they're not, and you're angry at them. You resented them already. And that happens a lot. When I talk to guys and they tell me about the whole thing, I can see this right here as they're speaking. We won't usually dive into like parent problems or anything like that until later on, as soon as we have like sort of a goal. And then I'll say, look, hey, there's some stuff that you probably need to deal with that is not really, you're not really conscious of. So let's talk about those, and then we'll go into that. Fragments of the emotional complex may recur for a period of time, even years. However, because they are now small fragments, each can be handled as it arises. At least the crisis situation will have been passed through safely and consciously. Handling a crisis from the emotional rather than the intellectual level will shorten its duration dramatically. In the case of someone who loses a job, handling it from the intellectual level will produce thousands of thoughts and hypothetical scenarios. The person suffers through sleepless nights due to the racing thoughts about the situation as the mind reviews it over and over again. How many, so he's talking about somebody who's losing a job, but I'm seeing it from somebody who's going through a breakup. And what they're doing is they're like, okay, that person's probably with somebody else. Maybe I'm ugly. Maybe I'm too short. Maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm that. You go through all of these things, and then you realize eventually that none of that even matters. It's the actual emotion you have to deal with itself. Fear, anger, pride, shame, guilt, apathy, desire. So once you deal with the emotion, the thoughts will stop. So so many guys will be like, man, Kyle, I dream about her. I think about her 24/7. And I'm like, yes, you have to deal with the emotion. The emotion needs to be dealt with, guys. All of this is fruitless until the underlying emotion is surrendered. The thoughts will be engendered endlessly. We all know of the people who have had an emotional crisis many years ago, and to this day they have not recovered. It has totally colored their life, and they have paid a big price for their lack of know-how in handling the underlying emotions. There are numerous benefits to handling a life crisis successfully. For one thing, the amount of suppressed and repressed emotion is now much less. The crisis has forced it up to be relinquished, and therefore the amount that is left in the reservoir is much less. I talk about the emotional pool a lot, and that's kind of what this is. When your emotional pool is full and you don't deal with the actual emotions, right? Your drain is clogged, so to speak, then you're not going to be able to handle life very well. And you're going to sit there thinking that like life is shit and angry. You're going to be angry and you're going to be like, the world sucks. Men suck. Women suck. You're going to start thinking these things, identifying yourself with the pain and the frustration and the fear that is going on in your body. There's a greater feeling of self-esteem and confidence because there is the awareness that one can survive and handle whatever life will bring. There's an overall reduction of fear of life, a greater feeling of mastery, greater compassion for the suffering of others, and an increased ability to help them through crisis, similar circumstances, and so on. Paradoxically, after a life crisis, there's often a period of variable duration of peace and calmness, sometimes approaching the level of mystical experience. The dark night of the soul frequently precedes states of heightened awareness. One of the best known examples of this paradox is illustrated by persons who have had a near-death experience. They no longer fear death. I actually study near-death experiences a lot because I find that the answers that those people give are quite interesting. It brings me peace to study that stuff. There are now many books on the subject that reveal a certain commonality. Once the worst of all possible fears, the dread of shock and death, has been faced, it is superseded by the profound sense of serenity, peace, oneness, and immunity from fear. This also happens in a relationship when it ends, and you finally sort of come across the crux of all of the pain, I guess. That even makes sense. But anyway, when you finally cross that barrier, and you're like, this relationship, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? This relationship didn't kill me. And then some other girl will look your way and you'll look her way and you guys look at each other and smile. You're going to have those moments and you're going to realize all that suffering was for nothing. So all those fears that came up don't mean anything. Again, and then what happens is you start to separate yourself from the actual emotions themselves, and you become an observer of them. Oh, I'm feeling fear. And then you go and you step back from it. You go, what am I feeling fear for? There's an abundance of women. There's an abundance of money. There's an abundance of this. There's an abundance of that. There's an abundance of this. And then you start to go through and separate. Then you're like, meh. And then you let it go. They experience major leaps in growth and the sudden appearance of new talents and capacities. Thus, every life crisis carries with it the kernels of a reversal, a renewal, an expansion, a leap in consciousness, and a letting go of the old and the birth of a new. So the next little section is called Healing the Past. Now, this video is already really long, so I want you guys to pick up this book and go right to this section. It's called Healing the Past. It's page 41. Whoops. You guys will be able to see the letting go methods in there. But everything in this video should help you to some degree understand awareness precedes change. So when you have awareness of what's going on, then you can go and recognize exactly what you're doing wrong and go, okay, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do this better. And I'm going to focus on letting go piece by piece, right? That was a major revelation to me when I first saw it. Actually, like I told you guys, I've already been doing that sort of, but now that I see it, I can hone it better. That's really what I meant. So I'll see you guys in the next video. If you guys want coaching, let me know. It's all down below in the description box. If you guys know anybody looking for marketing services in the electrical, plumbing, or HVAC vertical, let me know as well. KyleJohnsonSEO@gmail.com. I'm going to have a site up and a YouTube channel up for that soon. I'll see you guys in the next video. Done.